Hi, my name is Pickles, and this is Arrow, and we love to backpack. This is a show about the tricks and methods that I've learned over the years for safe and fun backpacking. It's also a show about dogs. Maybe you're a beginner, or maybe you've been hiking for a while. You might have even traveled the world. I don't know, but I'm hoping that maybe I can help you improve, or even get you started into backpacking. I'm not a survivalist, nor am I an expert. I'm just an explorer who wants to share my experiences with you. The ideas that I talk about in my videos are what work for me. I hope to help you find what works best for you. If you are a beginner, learn your limits by starting small. Backpacking is not for everyone. And most importantly, hike your own hike. That means do what is best for you. Hey, thanks for joining us again. On the prior episode, we talked about how to pack a backpack for a human, and on this episode, we are going to talk about packing the bag for your doggo. Before we get started, there's a few items that I want to talk about. The first of which is you need to actually consult with your vet before you take your dog on a backpacking trip that is of considerable distance, and I'm talking about between 10 to 30 miles over the course of a couple of days or a weekend. So one thing you want to ask them, is your dog appropriate for backpacking? And that's a very good question because dogs come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, and some dogs are just better fit to carry weight on their back and to do that kind of long distance endurance that is required. There's also this ruggedness that some dogs are just more capable of. So really, that's a really good question to ask your vet. I would start off with that one. The next one is you want to make sure, is your dog healthy? So does your dog have any hip problems? Hip dysplasia is very common among German Shepherds. You just want to make sure that your dog is not too old to go backpacking, because you don't really want to put your dog into a situation where he or she may get harmed out there in the backcountry, and then you're very far away from safety and help, and then you're in a lot of trouble because you've got to get your dog back to safety. And you and your dog don't want to be put in that situation. So those are two very good questions to ask. The third question that you want to ask is my puppy old enough to be weight bearing? And that is a very valid question, because as both dogs and ourselves, as we grow from little children into adults, there is a change in our skeletal system and our musculature. So you want to make sure that the dog is actually formed well enough in both the skeletal and musculature of their bodies in order to adequately carry the weight in a safe way. So that's also a very important question that you'll want to ask your vet. You also want to make sure that your dog is up to date on any shots and tags, such as rabies. Those are all very important for very common sense reasons, but even more so when you're out in the backcountry, especially when your dogs will be encountering a lot of parasites such as ticks and fleas and ringworms and anything that they may run into while drinking or eating out in the backcountry. The next item I want to talk about is that the backpack that you put on your dog should never exceed 25% of its body weight. Now, 25% is a pretty big number. I'm not advocating for you to put 25% of your dog's weight on his back. I'm just saying that 25% is the max. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to shoot for a way lower number. Now, Arrow, for example, he's a 62-pound dog, and the pack, fully packed with water and food and all the gears that he needs, is about 9 pounds. So he's sitting right at about 15%. So I've got about a 10% margin there that I've decreased, and he's not sitting right at 25%. You just got to think, it's just like yourself when you go out on the trail and you're going to do a lot of miles, whether you're doing 10 miles or 20 miles or 30 miles, you don't want a lot of extra weight on your back. It's tiring, and it's going to wear you down. It's the same thing with the dog, and you have to think about their perspective, and you're putting them out on this long trail. It might be hot, it might be cold, you don't know, but the thing is, you want to reduce their weight as much as possible while at the same time packing adequately for them so that they are both safe and healthy on the trip. Now, in the former episode, I talked about the use of checklists. I think that checklists are so important. And with the dog backpack, it's exactly the same as the human backpack. You need to use that checklist. You need to go right down the list and look at all of your items for your pack. And then when you get done with that, then you need to move on to your dog's pack, and you need to go down that list and make sure that every item is addressed so that your dog, when it goes out in the backcountry, it has all of the necessary items that it needs to live healthy, happy, safely, to survive. And lastly, whenever you take your dog out for the first time, you need to pay attention to your dog. Is your dog happy? Does your dog seem like he or she is really worn out? Is your dog struggling? Those are very important things that you need to look for. Your dog cannot talk to you and cannot tell you what its wants or needs are. So you really need to pay close attention to your pet to make sure that you are treating him or her the best way possible. Okay, just like when packing a human backpack, we do want to start off with Ziploc bags, and I do recommend the 1 quart freezer bags with the 3 bands that you can seal. Make those watertight. You're going to need those here a little bit later as we get into packing the pack. To start off with, I'm going to talk about the actual backpack. Now the backpack that I use is called the Approach. It's made by Roughwear, and it's a hunter orange color, and you can go out onto the Roughwear website and they have many different backpacks that they are selling, and they have many different backpacks sizes and different backpacks for different purposes. If you're doing a long trek, 10 to 30 miles, I recommend this Approach pack. It's a really great pack. It's very durable. It's made of good materials. It's got a lot of pretty cool features on it. It fits my dog, Arrow, really well. It's got some places on it where you can modify it slightly just to make the pack slightly better or to customize it for your needs. When it comes time for you to decide on what size backpack that you need for your dog, the Roughwear site recommends that you measure your dog around the torso at its widest point. And based on that measurement, the circumference that you are going to find out by measuring the largest part of its torso, you are going to use that number on their sizing chart, and then you'll know which size backpack you're going to need for your actual breed of dog. It has several pockets. It has a top smaller pocket here. These will end up on the actual back of the dog, so you don't really want to put anything too heavy up in here. These are just like smaller items. Then you've got the much larger, wider pockets down at the bottom. And you're going to want to put your heavier items like your water and your food bags and sleeping bag and sleeping pad if you're going to have your dog carry those things. And one item of note that's very important is that your dog should only pack what is needed for your dog. That your dog should not be carrying any of your items. I get that question a lot when I'm out on the trail. People think that Arrow is actually carrying some of my items, and that is not the case at all. Like I said earlier, you really want to cut their weight as much as possible. Your dog can't talk to you. He can't tell you what is too heavy and what is not. So really, it's up to you to make the best decisions to try to minimize the weight that your dog is carrying. So part of that is making sure that your dog is only carrying items that he or she needs. Here you can see some of the customization that I've done on the pack. I took some climbing carabiners and I took some climbing rings and added them to the pack. This is some climbing rope. And then I've got an extra short leash here that I put on the pack. And these go to the collar that goes around Arrow's neck. The reason why I did this was whenever you attach the leash directly to the collar and you have this backpack on, there's a great likelihood that your dog is going to wind himself up in the leash. So what I did was I created a little system here that actually allows the leash to run through these rings here, and when I attach the actual leash to the pack, it's back here near his tail, and that way, you know, wherever he turns, this is always going to be attached to his tail, and he's much less likely to get hung up in his own leash. So that's why I did that. And it's a pretty cool idea. It looks pretty cool. So, you know, if you like the idea of customizing your pack and putting something cool on, then maybe this is something that you would like to do. Just like in the human bag, we have a stuff sack that serves as the bear bag. And this is a homemade stuff sack that I have. It's just a little small one. Dog food is just like human food. It smells, and bears and raccoons and whatever else wants to get into your food is also going to want to get into your dog's food. So anything that smells that your dog is carrying, you will want to put in this bear bag at the end of the night. And then we will string it up with the other human bear bags at the end of the night. And that way his food is safe, and you're not attracting bears to come into your campsite. So it's important to have a bear bag for your dog. I like to carry a small extra leash, and when I say small, I mean it's lightweight. So this is just a really cheap little black leash that I found probably in a grocery store. It's pretty lightweight. I just like to have an extra leash because whenever we get to camp and it's time to take the backpack off of Arrow, then I know I have this little small leash that I can attach to his collar if we need to make some special trips or trek around or explore or whatever it is we're wanting to do. I'll go ahead and I'm going to put this bear bag in the top pocket here. And we're just going to pack the left side. You do want to be conscious of how much weight you're putting on both sides because you don't want the saddlebags to be lopsided. So you try to equalize the weight as much as possible. I'm going to take that small leash that I have. I'm going to also put it up in the top with the bear bag. Now here's an item that you might think that you don't need out in the backcountry, and for most cases you're probably right, but you really do need to carry some poo bags. And there's several reasons. People who L&T is very important to them would say that you most definitely need to pack your dog's poo out of the backcountry. There's also, whenever you're hiking a lot of big long distance trails such as the Appalachian Trail or the PCT, or if you're doing the Sheltowee here in Kentucky, you're going to have a lot of road sections, and road sections are going to take you through towns. They're also going to take you through residential areas. And the last thing that you want to happen is for your favorite little friend to pop a squat on one of the locals' front lawn. And that doesn't look very nice. It's not very good hiker relations with the local community. So it's good to have these poo bags so that you can pack it out and dispose of it responsibly. So I'm going to attach that. These bags are really cool in terms of they've got daisy chains on both sides, so you can attach a lot of different stuff to these daisy chains, and I'm going to put these poo bags on this daisy chain on the back. If you're hiking in cold winter or late early spring or late fall, it's going to be cold, and especially if you're in the north, you do want a sleeping pad for your dog. And it's just like the sleeping pad that you carry for yourself. This is going to separate your dog from the ground and will prevent them from getting cold as easy. So, and a sleeping pad is almost more important than a sleeping bag. But if the weather is cold enough, you most definitely will want a sleeping pad and a sleeping bag. We'll get to that here in a second. It folds up real nice. These are all rough wear products, by the way. This is the Highlander pad. It goes with the Highlander sleeping bag. We've got the Approach from Rough Wear. These are all Rough Wear products. Very nice gear. They do a fantastic job in taking consideration of what the animal's needs are. What I like to do is individually pack each meal into its own separate quart Ziploc bag. And then I also put a trail topper, if you can see it there. This is Blue Wilderness Trail Toppers. This flavor is actually beef. They've got duck flavor and turkey. They got a few different flavors. I like to take the trail topper because it's moist, it's meaty, and if your dog struggles with eating the dry food on the trail, if you put a trail topper, they will be much more likely to eat the food. And it's real important that you get your dog to eat consistently on the trail because you want them to have that energy so that they are healthy and happy. This goes on the left side of the pack. I recommend that you put 2 1-liter containers, one for the left side, one for the right side. This is just a 1-liter Aquafina bottle. I think the other side's got a Dasani bottle in it. They are both 1 liter in volume, and water is heavy weight. So you want to be very careful about packing too much water on your dog, because like I said, you don't want to go all the way up to 25%. You want to keep as much weight off your dog's back as possible. If you're going into an area that has, is going to have a lot of water, where you can filter, get your dog some new water, then it may not be as important to start out the hike with a full bottle. So just keep that in mind too. Take a look at your maps, know where your water crossings are going to be. Make an executive decision as to whether or not your dog is going to have to carry a full tank of water the entire trip. That's very important because water is very heavy, so be conscious of that. And we're already done with the left side of the pack, so we're going to go ahead and zip that up, zip up both pockets. This is another Roughwear product. It's just a food bowl / water bowl. It's got a rubber liner on the inside. It's very good at holding liquids, and this is what I take on every trip. It collapses down, which is nice, so you get a small profile there. You also, on the back, it's got a little loop here. You can connect a carabiner, and I really like that because those daisy chains I was talking about earlier, I like to take that carabiner and attach it to one of the daisy chains. So that can hang out on the outside of the pack. You don't really need to store it on the inside because you've got a place you can put it on the outside. Now we're going to go to the right hand side of the pack. This is that Highlander sleeping bag that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Now, this is when I first got Arrow into backpacking, so I had bought this with the hopes that it would fit him. It's made for dogs up to 60 pounds. This one, he's a 62-pound dog, and it is still a little bit small for him. So whenever you go out to the Roughwear site, if you decide to buy from them and buy the Highlander sleeping bag, they do have multiple sizes now, so just carefully consider what your dog is actually going to need and what is going to fit your dog. And they have sizing charts on the website, so be sure to check that out. And just like a human sleeping bag, this will stuff into a small stuff sack. Put that in the right side of the bag. Now that material on that sleeping bag has a water repellent. If you know you're going to be in wet conditions, you may want to get your dog its own poncho. And they do make rain gear for dogs that's on the Roughwear site. They also make coats and jackets, things that are made of down with lightweight material. Just always be conscious of what the weather's going to do and what kind of gear your dog is carrying, because your dog is just like you. He or she doesn't want to be miserable and cold out in the backcountry. So always be cognizant of that and try to prepare adequately whenever you're going out into the backcountry. So here's our other food bag. Like I said earlier, this is a saddle bag, so we want to make sure that the weight is evenly distributed across both sides. So we're going to go ahead and put this food sack in the right hand side. So there's 2 meals right there that I just had. Now you can do more. One thing I forgot to mention about the sleeping pad and the sleeping bag is that these things are heavy. So these are items that you really only want to pack in the colder months. If you were in a warm climate and you expect hotter temperatures, I would not pack a pad and I would not pack a sleeping bag. Your dog will be just fine snuggling up to you in the tent. Another item that you may not have thought about that I always bring with me is a small cloth soft muzzle. Now, Arrow, whenever I get out into the backcountry, he's got a little problem with the dark. He gets a little afraid of the dark, and he gets a little wary of strangers. And I've had him snap at a few people out in the backcountry. And whenever you're around other hikers that you don't know and you're around strangers, the last thing you want is your dog to bite somebody out in the backcountry. Now, I absolutely do not recommend or think that you should use a muzzle as your dog is hiking down the trail. That is absolutely a bad idea, because your dog needs to pant, they need to breathe, they need to be able to sniff and bark and all those things that dogs like to do. And if you put this muzzle on your dog the entire time they're hiking, they're going to be extremely unhappy. The only time that you need to use this muzzle is when you are potentially around other people that you don't know, strangers, other hikers, if you fear that your dog may snap or even bite them. So a cloth muzzle is not a bad idea, and you just pack that up in the top of the pack and make sure it's handy in case you need it. I bring a spare prong collar for Arrow, so whenever we get to camp, I like to be able to be sure that I can take his backpack off. And then if, Arrow and I need to go exploring, or we just need to walk around there at camp, then I know I can always keep him on a leash at all times without the backpack. Zip that up. I'm going to take my other 1 liter of water. I'm going to put that on the right hand side. I'm going to zip that up. So the main compartments of the pack are now packed. It's ready to roll. The last item I want to talk about is the actual leash. Now, some of you may think, oh my gosh, taking a dog out in the backcountry, how am I going to do this? I need to use my trekking poles, I need to have my hands so that I can scramble up big rocks. Taking a leash is just not practical, and that's a very good point. You do need to use your hands. So what I did was I went to an Army surplus store and bought an old Army belt. And you can see it here. These things are super heavy duty. They're very strong. They've got this great big clasp in the middle. They put together really well. I like this belt. I took a locking carabiner, attached it onto the Army belt, so that locking carabiner will never come off unless I want it to. And then I got on Chewy's and I bought this pretty cool leash. And the reason I like this leash so much is you've got a steel ring here that's attached to almost the handle of the leash, and you can take that and put that on your locking carabiner. So you've got your leash handle here. It's nice and padded. You've got some good strong webbing here, and then you have a second leash handle which is down near the clasp where the leash actually attaches to the collar. This is a really good idea, a really good feature to have when you're hiking out in the backcountry, because you're going to be in some tight spots on the trail where you're going to have to pass some other hikers. And if your dog is a little bit nervous and a little bit nippy, you're afraid he or she is a biter, then having your dog on a short leash, and that I believe that's where that phrase comes from, having your dog on a short leash is a very useful thing, so that you can pull him or her off the side of the trail so that hikers can get by safely, and then everybody's happy and you move on. So this is kind of a cool leash. I don't know what, let's see, the brand is, it's a Wagon Tails, but I bought this on Chewy.com. It's been a great leash. It's very strong. It's got some great webbing, and it goes really good with my Army belt. And that's it. Those are all the items that I pack for my dog. Now, you may ask about a few items such as rain jackets or coats. Yes, those are great ideas. Just like I said, you need to be weight conscious, and you also need to be conscious of what the weather is doing. You can also, Roughwear sells booties for your dog, so you can put some boots on your dog to keep their little paws safe. There's also another item that I didn't show on this video that I don't have currently on hand, but it's called Mushers. And what it is, it's a balm, just like Body Glide, that you put on your dog's paws. And this is very useful for preventing your dog from getting hurt out on the trail. It makes your dog's paws a little bit more moist and makes them just overall more comfortable when traveling over long distances. We've found out that you can also use this Mushers to put it under where the padding of the pack is going to go, and this will help relieve your dog from any potential rashes or whatnot from the movement of the pack as they walk down the trail. So it's a great product. I highly recommend you buy some Mushers. You can find it also on Chewy.com, and you just slide it into the backpack just like all the other items. Make sure that your pack weight is evenly distributed. So I hope you enjoyed this episode about how to pack your dog's backpack. If you have any questions or comments, you can put those below in the YouTube comments section. I hope you and your dog have many great hiking adventures together.